Okay, we're live. Okay, three, two, one. Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 81 of the Security Podcast on the In30 Network. Today's topic is what I want to call bypassing security measures securely. I think that's the best way to call it. I mean, Tom had a good title, I think, but I like mine better.
I like lazy security, but that's just me.
It's basically, we want to talk about, so you have this monster 64 character password, you have an alphanumeric on your phone that's a pain to type in and everything else, but then they come out with these ways to Bluetooth ways or other ways to make getting into these things easier. And of course, you say yes to it. Best example is Touch ID. And we all say, hey, that's secure, this and that. But what you're doing is you're swapping out one security protocol or one security factor with another one. So, yeah, I mean, Tom, I guess you and I are both on Android, so we don't have the benefits of Touch ID. But
Right.
but we hear now from I/O last week, we hear that Android M, whatever they're going to call it, is going to have a native fingerprint sensor. So we're going to see more, or all phones now are going to come with some sort of fingerprint technology to let us bypass our PIN code and go straight to the secure element or whatever it is. And I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, ultimately it is a good thing. I would like it if they implemented it like Apple, or at least constrained it a little harsher than Apple, because the timeout is really nice. I think it's 48 hours where it locks it out and it says, hey, you can't use your fingerprint unlock this. It's been too long. You have to actually put in your PIN or password. And that's a great thing. You know, if you have a good lawyer, who can, and your phone is being used as evidence somehow, they can't force you to put in the password, but they can force you to use your fingerprint to unlock the phone. So if you've got a lawyer, make sure that they get you, 2 days of delay in that whole process, which isn't too far of a stretch, but you want to be careful.
I think you can change that. I'm almost positive that
would be nice.
I mean, Android has, and we'll get into smart lock in a few minutes, but Android has that there is a timeout, but if you restart your phone in both cases,
yes,
it requires you to do all this. And maybe that's what it is. If your phone somehow miraculously lasts 48 hours on a battery charge, you're going to have to put it in again.
Right. Well, I know that law enforcement for a lot of these things have gotten really smart. And they don't want the devices to remote wipe if they're being collected for evidence, and they don't want them to die in case they're encrypted. So they'll, throw a phone charger and the phone into a Faraday cage, so you can't remote wipe it, and it's running on a stream of power, so it doesn't just die. Now, if you're running the daily builds of CyanogenMod that I am, your phone just randomly restarts anyway, so that wouldn't even help them. But for most everyone else, that would be a way to kind of bite.
That's not a bad idea. I didn't even think of that.
Yeah.
So I always say that. How come my phone restarts at the absolute worst time? Why can't I set a cron job to restart at 1 a.m. every night?
Yep. Well, then you run into the issue if your phone is encrypted in the old style, where it's not just locking out pieces of user data, where it's actually locking the whole user partition, your phone won't complete boot up, which means any alarms you have set on the phone are not going to fire. So
Well,
I've had that happen to me before. I've woken up at 8:30, supposed to be in the office at 7:30, and freaked out. My phone restarted. We've all been there.
So this takes us back to the old Galaxy Nexus days, right when Ice Cream Sandwich came out, where it actually did restart randomly in your pocket, and if you had encryption on, you didn't know that anything was going on.
Yep. And I actually, this is kind of unrelated, but I did test the HTC M8, or the HTC One M8. It's got this great feature where if you slap the screen a couple times, it will unlock. So I didn't even have to hit the power button, or not unlock. It'll turn on the screen. Amazingly enough, this can happen in your pocket. And I've got this awesome passcode on it that says, hey, you've got 10 attempts remaining before data is wiped. those buttons can also be hidden in your pocket. So somewhere over the course of 3 or 4 hours with this phone in my pocket, I was able to accidentally type in a wrong pin 10 times. And I can guarantee you, rest assured, that the remote wipe or the pin wipe does its job, because I had to rebuild my phone the next day.
You're talking about a course of a day. Give my son about 15 minutes.
Yes.
And it will be gone.
Yeah, so you've got to be careful with it.
Well, there was an article about somebody recently, and it was some famous tech person who, no, it was Noble. Noble traveled to, lost his phone and went to Mexico. Our buddy, Noble, traveled, lost his phone, got in Mexico, and the remote wipe didn't work.
Really?
The Android device manager remote wipe didn't work.
Wow. That's a pretty big bug.
Well, again, and no one just randomly sits there and says, let me remote wipe everything.
Right. That's not really something that you test out a whole lot. Is you say, oh, hey, yeah, let's just remote wipe my phone today. That sounds like a great idea.
And yeah, apparently it didn't work. And I don't have that many details, but that's basically the whole gist of the story. And he was not happy. But I mean, I wouldn't be happy either. My phone, I assume that it works because it does the ring, it does the all the other stuff, the pin lock, but it didn't remote wipe.
Yeah, that's concerning. I would like to test that out further. But, you know, there's not a great way. If you're relying on this device, like most of us are, for your day-to-day life, it does everything for you. It does your email, your calendar, your alarms. I mean, my phone manages just about every component of my life. It just woke me up a little bit ago so I could go to work. It'll tell me what I have to do when I get to work through my email. And I don't really feel like wiping and rebuilding it a whole lot just to test the feature. But it is something that we're going to have to find a way to do.
And it may not be on every phone. It may work on all the phones except your insert brand here.
Right. Yeah.
It may not understand that you're running. It may understand that you're running CM12, but it may not understand this nightly and not work.
Right. Exactly. There might be a bug somewhere in some protocol or some form of the Android device manager where it just doesn't fire correctly.
So, but back to the topic. So you came up with all this stuff, but now you're annoyed that you have to do it. Now, it first started where you hit the home button and you had to type the password in. So you set your lock screen to be 10 or 15 seconds. Well, if I let it lapse 10, 15 seconds, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, no big deal. And then we told you, you know what? In those 10 minutes, bad things can happen. Mm-hmm. So you started reducing it and reducing it. So now we have this problem that, okay, now every time the screen goes black, you have to put in your password, which is really, really annoying. Yes. So Google came up with, I guess they call Smart Lock. I think that's what it's called. I'm looking at it, Smart Lock. Basically, it says it's a Bluetooth device, and this first started on the Moto brands of phones. So the Moto X. Basically, it said, you know what? If you have a trusted Bluetooth device, it will unlock your phone because of the proximity. So, yeah.
Yeah, which is actually a pretty good idea. So, I know I'm a terrible person. I'm a bad human being, and I use my phone in my car, right? The vast majority of us do, to switch tracks or to start playing a new podcast, or you just got that text and you absolutely have to read it because you know something's happening and it can't wait. We've all been there. We've all done it. It's not the right thing to do, and you and I should probably stop that, right? All of our listeners should probably stop using our phones in our car. But the biggest thing, the biggest pain to me is in the car, I unlock the phone, or I have to put in my big long pin to unlock the phone, and I get it wrong half the time, and then I'm glancing at the screen, and I shouldn't be doing that. If I could just hook my phone to the Bluetooth in my car and have it unlock when I'm in my car, that would be fantastic. That would be magical. That would remove 9/10 of my frustration with my phone in my vehicle.
And my initial reaction to that, so yes, Android can do that. There's new Smart Lock feature on, I guess it's the Lollipop phones going forward. So on Android, Lollipop it. will do that. And I initially said, what happened? So I'm concerned. Law enforcement pulls me over. They want my phone, and I can't have plausible deniability that it's unlocked because, hey, the phone just unlocks it because they're grabbing it right from the window. They're right there. They'll have the phone. Then I thought, well, this only works if Bluetooth is connected. You have to turn your car off anyway. So as soon as you turn your car off, the Bluetooth shuts down, and then now it needs the password. So for that reason, I turned it on.
Yeah, and that's a good way to kind of get around that if you don't expect your phone to be taken, if you don't expect to be coerced in any manner. Now, if you suspect you might be, if you suspect that at any point a law officer might say, hey, yeah, you've got to turn on your car, or, you know, I'm taking your car or your keys and your phone, at that point, it's an issue. And you get the same thing with the GPS smart unlock, where it says, hey, if you're within this fenced area at work or at school or at the house, or if you're in a trusted place, we'll just keep your phone unlocked so you don't have to worry about it. What's to stop either, you know, a thief, officer of the law, whoever, if they know those locations, just walking there and unlocking your device?
Well, so for that reason, yes, I have my home set for that because, you know what, fine, whatever.
It's
everything
really
else is
convenient. It's
everything
really
else
convenient.
in my house is right there. So you're gonna grab my computer, you're gonna grab everything, you're gonna have your search warrants, you're gonna have this, fine, whatever. But I don't set work for that.
Right.
Mainly because I'm in a position where I trust no one at work. It's not like I'm sitting at a desk. I'm teaching. I'm in a couple different classrooms. I'm walking in the hallway. Someone sees a phone, they're going to take it. So at least I have it locked. So at work, it is a big hassle, but that's what I have to do.
Yeah. And, you know, the law enforcement thing, while we do spend, at least I spend an inordinate amount of time talking about it, it's a very remote occurrence, right? Not everyone is going to get accosted by the police for, you know, speeding. You know, no a cop is going to pull you over and say, hey, I need to see your cell phone right now because you were speeding. Yes, it's happened before, but the chances of it happening now are very slim. So there's ways to increase your security without driving yourself mad. Because the thing you don't want to do is to use, you know, this 12-character pin on your phone and have it lock instantly all the time, and your screen is only on for 30 seconds before it automatically shuts off and locks, and then you've got 2 tries to put in your pin or it wipes your phone. You don't want to go crazy because we're human and we will end up going the exact opposite route, right? We'll turn off all security because we'll get fed up and sick of it. And that's what you don't want to happen. You want to find your happy middle ground where you're the happiest in your place between convenience and security.
And yes, for example, I have my Yubico, my Neo, which I have to scan against my what's it called, my phone. And yes, I can say it's a trusted device, but generally my keys are near my phone. The problem is now that I'm realizing they're really not. I'm in bed and I have to unlock LastPass and I have to get up or not do it, and it ends up being a pain. But at least I understand why it is, so it stops me from doing potentially insecure things.
Right.
So I don't know. I never heard of law enforcement forcing me to turn the car back on.
Yeah, that would be a new occurrence. That would be something new to me. Now, you know, could it have happened in the past? Sure, but I don't know that it has or hasn't. I haven't heard of anything like that. But you know, with these technologies getting popular, with the, you know, getting around security measures getting more popular, I imagine we'll start to see some of this behavior. Now, again, keep in mind that at least in the U.S., the Supreme Court has said that without a warrant, a law enforcement officer cannot search your phone. It is against the law. And if a police officer asks to search your phone, you should decline, right? They might take it anyway. If you hand it to them and say, yeah, go ahead and search it, you're now giving them permission, right? The Supreme Court's not going to help you if you just open the doors for someone. But if you say, no, you're not allowed under, you know, the Supreme Court's new ruling, they're going to get angry. They might take it anyway, but at that point, it's on them, and they're illegally obtaining evidence, and it's not going to hold up in court. But you know, it's one of the things to be aware of, because while the law is the law is not always followed all the time by everyone, including law enforcement.
So with that said, if you're ever going to be stopped, I don't know how hard or easy it is for you to do, but turning off your cell phone is probably the smartest thing you can do, because even if you turn it on encrypted, you still have to put in your master password.
Right. So that's what I do. You know, I got pulled over for speeding because I'm a bad human being and a bad citizen. And, you know, when the cop was pulling up behind me, I had the car stopped, reached over, and shut off my phone. And by the time he reached the window, the phone was shut down. And I knew at that point, it's encrypted. You need the password or PIN, which is going to be lengthy enough that they can't just brute force it. And the phone is going to be relatively protected. Now, should you turn off your phone? Should you launch something like Bamboozer or another recording app to record your interactions with the police if you think you're going to be hassled inappropriately, right? You can't turn off your phone in that situation. So you want to make sure you've got some sort of lock, some sort of PIN lock that the cop can't just shut off the recording.
Well, so that's why I was saying, that's why I didn't think about it. Yes, I do the same thing you do. I turn off my phone. But I also said, you know what? I turn off the car. That disconnects the Bluetooth. Now I got to put a PIN lock. I guess law enforcement is smart enough to know, well, if you turn the car back on, there's a good chance that it's going to reconnect.
Right. If this person has the feature enabled, which, you know, this thing just came out. Yeah. It's going to take a lot of time for the behavior to sink down. Law enforcement is just now getting to the point where they can, in an automated fashion, try to break 4-digit pins on phones. And that's kind of a scary proposition.
Well, okay, so let's move on to that. But let's move on to that. So the first thing we found out is the Supreme Court says your fingerprint is not protected. So they can force you to give up your fingerprint.
Yes.
So in that case, turning off your phone, because on iOS and now I'm sure future on Android, is that you do have you can bypass the fingerprint. Let's say you fail 10 times or even one time. One of the things we've heard Steve Gibson, Security Now, say is put a different finger. Don't always use your thumb. Use your forefinger, because you're going to and have it at one attempt, because you're going to put your thumb and say, oh, oops, wrong finger. Oh, I got to put my master password in. I don't know it. Sorry.
Perfect, plausible deniability.
I always do this right, and now I'm all jittered. I have it written down at home, and since I'm driving anyway, I really can't use my phone, so what's the big deal? So you can do that, but then you were going to say, so they take your phone.
Yeah, they can take your phone again with a warrant. They can search it. So 4-digit pins, not really strong enough. Now, for devices that have it enabled, and not all devices do this. I haven't seen the option exposed everywhere. Even on my custom ROM, I have not seen the option to wipe after X amount of tries. This phone with the stock firmware came with it. It's nice unless you've got it in your pocket and it wipes in your pocket. And the only reason I found that out is because I pulled it out because it was really warm. I was like, oh, what is going on here? And I saw that Android was rebuilding itself. So it's a fantastic feature if it doesn't come back to bite you. Now on my phone here with my custom ROM of Signage and Nightly, I don't see the option exposed anywhere. So having a 4-digit pin on a device that's not going to wipe after so many wrong attempts, that's not a good thing, because they can just hammer on it all day long, again, in an automated fashion to unlock the device.
And unfortunately, we all know that 4-digit pins go quickly, and
yes. So, and they're not exactly the hardest thing to figure out, especially, you can sort of look at screen smudges and get a general idea. It's more of an art than a science.
I like the pin swipe. I don't know why the pin swipe is not secure.
I also like the pin swipe. I would say it's less secure generally, than a long, good pin. But you could make a really complex swipe pattern. I had a complex swipe pattern for a long time until I started encrypting my phones by default.
Yeah, and I don't know why
which don't let you, do the pin, which is kind of annoying. I wish they would let you do a swipe and have numbers on the back end controlling a password and link into the encryption system.
Hash the swipe. I'm sure that's not that hard to do, and match the hash with whatever and do it. But no, they don't let you. And I liked my, like I said, and like you said, I liked my swipe pattern, and I can't do it.
It was nice. It was nice and complex and long enough that it couldn't be easily replicated. But right now I'm using an 8-digit pin. It's nuts. It's crazy. It's annoying. It takes me 2 or 3 times to unlock my phone. Right, so the one try and wipe the phone thing wouldn't work for me. I'd probably set it to something like 10 or 15 tries. But an 8-digit pin basically guarantees that they're going to have a hard time brute forcing it with manual methods of poking at the screen. Right, if we're talking 8-digit pin on a website without rate limiting, without lockouts, you could crack that in a couple seconds. But on a phone where you've got to poke a screen with something, even if it's a mechanical poker with a stylus that's typing these in, it's going to take you a while to crack because it starts slowing down.
That's true. What is it, the memory hardened? That's the right word.
Well, it just says, hey, you've got to wait now X amount of time, or put in your Google account password, which should be really long and complicated and random. So. For those not using a password manager, please, for the love of God, use a password manager.
Well, yeah. So on the iOS side, they do that after attempt 5, then they start delaying you 1 minute, then it gets to 5 minutes, and 10 minutes, and then maybe 15 minutes. So you don't have this guess of in your pocket. I mean, yes, it still could have happened, but it would have obviously taken longer. But
right.
We're sitting here telling you put these crazy things in, and then we're also on the flip side, we're saying, hey, look, let us show you some ways to make it really convenient. And the story goes, my sister hated the fact that work forced her through Exchange to have a PIN code or whatever it was. The rule is they had to have it, so she had to put a PIN code in. But now with Smart Lock, that bypasses, I guess, some of the work features. It says, hey, you know what? If you're within this area, you're within your apartment, you're within your car, hey, this is great. Touch ID, same thing. You're going to be able to unlock with Touch ID instead of having to put your master password. And now, apparently, so in the show notes, Google is saying, let's take this even further. So we have it for Android. Because everything gets synced up through Chrome, they're going to, in their secure area, whatever that means, which I have to trust for the most part, they're saying, we're going to store these passwords in the cloud for you. And when you're on your Chromebook, they'll be in for your passwords. They'll do a whole lot of cloud functionality as long as you're signed into the device.
Right. And it's not a bad idea if you trust Google with your passwords, with your accounts, with watching what apps you're launching on Android, which they do, and putting in passwords on apps. It's not a bad idea. If you trust Google. If you don't enable it. At least for the moment, Google is not forcing you to use Smart Lock. I have the option on my device. I have it turned off because I can't think of a reason where I would like to trade those amounts of security for convenience. I haven't gotten there quite yet. In my car, doesn't have Bluetooth. So it's an older model car, and it really doesn't have much except an aux port. So it works for my needs, but Smart Lock wouldn't help me in that situation. As far as the other features like watching apps, remembering app passwords, I'm not going to use Google for that, right? I'm going to use KeePass or LastPass to manage my passwords and fill them in on the device.
Well, the problem is that you and I get that. You and I know better. But for the most part, you get that pop-up box that says, hey, would you like Chrome to remember your passwords?
Yep.
And then the first time you see it on your phone, you're like, oh, wow, Chrome remembered my password. I don't have to type this in. Sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think Google changed this their password storing place where they said, hey, if you have access to the physical device, you're hosed anyway. to something slightly more secure where you have to enter in some sort of password.
Right. You've always had the option to encrypt it with a separate passphrase on Google's servers. So it would have to get to you in an encrypted blob, and then you would log into the device. For the password storage, I know that they're binding something to a Windows security ID. So you have to have access to that account to get into it, and you can't just pull it. It's a little better. Again, if you have physical access to the device, it's not encrypted. Assume that your passwords are out in the open, right? It's not a bad idea for Google to launch this account or this password manager sort of deal for mobile and desktop and Chrome, and everything's all linked together in a googly way. For the people that aren't going to go out and purchase a password manager or set up a bunch of open source software or make the complicated moves in security, it's not a bad idea. It's really not a bad idea, because Google is going to say, hey, you're signing up for a new site. How about you use this random password that we've generated? That's a good idea. That's a really good idea. And then it'll remember it, and the people never have to worry about it. And now they're using different passwords on different sites by default, because they don't have to remember it. Why would they care what the password is? Chrome and Google take care of it for them. Now, again, this all relies on you trusting Google, but if you do, and you're really lazy, it's not a bad option to increase your security.
And I think, does Firefox do this on their mobile browser?
Yes, Firefox does do passwords on their mobile browser. Firefox Sync does work.
But again, it's mainly that you're using, it's the app passwords that are the big deal.
Right. Because this isn't just Chrome. On your phone, the example they give on Google's Smart Lock is you go to log into Netflix, and Google pops up a box at the bottom, and it says, hey, you want to log in with what we've got stored here in this account? And it'll just autofill your Netflix details right there. From when you've saved it in Chrome forever ago, it'll fill it in on the app on the phone. That's really powerful.
Well, and I've seen it work. My question is, which is really scary, is that I don't have this feature enabled. And it's not out yet, but they do have some elements where you can store stuff in Chrome. I do something that says, hey, would you like us to fill this in? And I always want to know, where did they get that? Because that's creepy, because I don't do that on purpose. And it's not because I don't trust Google. It's because I trust LastPass a lot more. And LastPass is on every device. But
right.
It seems to fill in the general basics. I guess I did fill in some sort of form fill with my name and address. So with that said, maybe that's what it's filling in.
Yeah, most likely.
So it's one of those. But for passwords, we always go with, we do like third party. I do like the fact that Google and both Apple, for that matter, they're all doing this. They're trying to make it easy. They're trying to implement security in a way that strikes that convenience balance. Because your IT person would say, oh, don't never turn Smart Lock on. Always have to do it. And you're going to say, hey, wait a second. I can't. I'm just not going to do this feature. Yeah. I'm not going to use the phone. I'm not going to do this. And then you say, or you're going to have this 1, 2, 3, 4 password that anybody can enter. So, okay, while you're at home, because you know what? You have other stuff at home that if you lose your phone, if somebody's going to go into your house and steal stuff, they're going to steal just more than your phone. So you have a vested interest to keep it secure.
Yeah, it's security is not black or white. It is not binary. It's not on or off. There are gradients, and you've got to find your happy medium, because having some security, right, having an ounce of security where you've got, a 4-digit PIN that you unlock with your fingerprint most of the time, but it's got a timeout after 24 hours, so you don't feel too horrible about it. It's way better than just leaving the phone unlocked completely, right? Using Google's password manager and not having your 6-character password across every single website you've ever visited it's way better. It's a better trade-off. So if you can be a little lazy and be a little more secure. You don't have to go all out. You can choose little pieces at a time to make yourself more secure.
And we've been talking about that for more than almost 2 years now. But again, if you don't have a password on, it's either because you actively choose you don't want to, but most likely is that you don't know how to, or you don't see that as convenient. And to make the the thing to say, hey, I don't trust Google, is not the right answer. So if you don't have a password and you want to put one on, just trust Google. They're okay. We're saying we don't necessarily trust Google because we've had 81 episodes of why you shouldn't trust necessarily Google and big companies and the cloud and everything else.
Right. There are options, and we choose the other options because we're a little bit crazy and we value security over the convenience.
We're the people that park at the end of the parking lot and lock the doors always and hide the stuff under the mats and have two-factor on our house. But that's because and I have no problem telling someone, hey, I'm crazy, so I'm going to tell you the way you should do it, not the way that you necessarily will end up doing it. But you know what? If you want to be secure, that's the right way.
Yep.
So anyway, we are out of time. So I'm going to end it now, and everyone have a good week.
See you guys.
Okay, bye.